Thank you for that introduction and for this invitation to once again speak at this wonderful conference. I use this, yeah. The topic of my presentation today is finding space and time for digital transformation, and I will talk about how training programs can become a way of making parts of this transformation process tangible and visible in order to also take some control over the journey. And we are still very much on a journey, as you've heard today. This journey of digital transformation, or as we should perhaps call it, transformation in the digital age. In 2014, when I was invited to We Are Museums in Warsaw to talk about digital transformation, I think much of it, or most of what I said then, I would repeat today, as it is still quite relevant. And it is a slow journey. We are still struggling with the issues of becoming a post-digital museum when digital is truly integrated in our organization and in our daily work. And in order to make this journey somewhat more understandable, we need to embrace a common picture of where we are going. And even more important, we can take control through strategic activities, and by doing so, make some parts of the journey tangible and more visible. In the past 3 years, since I last spoke at this conference, I think many museums have started paying much more attention to work processes, challenging current work practices, and rethinking the museum experience. And I think all the previous presentations today have shown that, and I'm really excited to hear this. I think this is also a response to new audience behavior and expectations that is still ongoing. We have, hopefully, a clearer picture of where we want to go today. However, I think there is still a challenge to reach a common understanding of digital within museums, among digital staff, early adopters, as well as across the entire museum, especially among senior staff or senior management. We need to be able to set up some common goals for the entire museum about this journey. So, talking about the impact of digital on museums, being able to pinpoint crucial issues is the first step. For example, one aspect of digital that I think we need to talk a lot more about is how it affects the museum experience. I think we need to picture a museum experience becoming digital-first experiences, and I would love to discuss this much more with you during the conference. There are enormous possibilities of starting experiences online, engaging audiences online, and delivering content online that then extends or not into a museum visit. We need to consider the museum offer and the museum experience as something that will be delivered across the entire public ecosystem, online and on-site. The consequence of this is that, for example, as we all know, digital can't be added on later in an exhibition project. But with a digital-first perspective, it should not only be part of a project from the start, but actually be the starting point for the museum experience, where we build engagement online by delivering immersive stories and let the story unfold into the public ecosystem. A second and more overarching goal should be to create more efficient use of digital. This is, in my opinion, mainly when traditional work practices and experience are empowered by digital in a way that is relevant and cost-efficient. But what does this mean? To answer this question, we need to take a step back and discuss internally what digital really is. To start with, digital is more than digitizing collections. This is, of course, obvious to most of you in the audience. But from my experience, and especially lately listening to museum managers at various conferences, there's still quite a discrepancy within museums about the definitions, but also benefits and use of digital. This has, of course, a lot to do with how we value success. For example, how many digitized objects we have online, how many visitors do we have at our museum website. Besides having a discrepancy between different perceptions of what digital means for museums, I think also as a consequence it is important to understand the need for transformation in the first place. Digital affects the entire organization and every part of developing the museum offer and experience. because we have to adapt to a rapidly changing world, new behaviors and expectations from the audience, and because we have to consider how meeting those expectations will affect our current work practices. Another goal for the digital transformation is to achieve a stable infrastructure for collections so that they can be more usable and accessible to our audiences. We also need to build usable infrastructures for our work processes, as we heard Seb Chan talk about earlier. We need to build sustainable and cost-effective digital solutions. And another important aspect of the transformation process in the digital age is to develop skills and mindsets for the digital era. Again, this is not primarily about digitizing collections or learning how to manage a scanner or using Photoshop, for example. It shouldn't even be about learning how to use social media. We are beyond that point. It is about embracing the terms under which we have to work in order to deliver relevant and rewarding museum experiences to our audiences. For example, we need to work in agile processes. We have to get comfortable with uncertainty, as we most often can't predict where we are going. We don't know each step of the way. We need to adapt new work methods and challenge old ones, and this means management need to support the team that will have to take time doing things that might seem or might even be off task, might be messy or even chaotic. This will require empowering the staff, giving them mandate and resources, and giving them opportunities to develop new skills. And another goal for our journey would be empowering also the audience. This means boosting critical thinking, facilitating creativity, collaboration, and communication. And again, we've seen some really, really good examples of this today in the earlier presentations. We move from the authoritative one-way communication to inviting audiences to dialogue, participation, and co-creation. In doing so, we need to learn how to build and maintain a sustainable online conversation, and the museum needs to find its voice and identity online, and we need to learn how to engage audiences online. And one concrete example of why we need to develop these new skills is the fact that we will initiate online conversation in a world of polarization and alternative facts. Is your staff equipped to do this? And when we have set up our goals, we need to figure out how do we get there. And I want to say that these were examples of things that I think are important to discuss internally in this process. And of course, there are many other aspects we need to consider. But when we have set up our goals, we need to figure out how do we get there. A very fundamental success factor is having a strategy for the digital era, regardless if you have a separate digital strategy or if you integrate the digital in the overall museum strategy. Another fundamental success factor is leadership fit for the challenges. I was going to say digital leadership, but we had a discussion with Seb last week, and I think, yes, it's time to stop saying digital leadership, but leadership fit for the digital era. The strategy will show us the way and help us with priorities, and the management will support the work, assign resources, and give mandate. So, again, this journey is made possible with a strategy for how to integrate digital into the organization and the museum offer in a relevant and sustainable way. And it is made possible with the management understanding, leading, and supporting the journey. But leadership and strategies are not enough. We also need time and space for the transformation process. Time for a break from everyday work that will help developing mindsets and skills to work in this new environment. And of course, being at this conference today is a part of your journey as well. Creating time and space can be done as a longer training program, where some organizations do create experimental lab environments. Without this, the transformation will be effortless and most certainly stressful, which in turn can be highly counterproductive, bringing the organization to a halt and even push the organization a few steps back in the process. So, what does time and space for digital transformation look like? There is no one size fits all, and as you all know, it very much depends on the size of the museum and the maturity of the organization. In fact, reaching the goals can be a bit like putting together blank pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. We can't spend years analyzing each part of the museum before even beginning the journey. By then, the conclusions will be outdated and irrelevant. We need to move ahead with the blank pieces. And one way to fill in the blanks and to make parts of this journey more tangible and visible is to allow for time and space to learn how to develop new ideas, confidently make new decisions, and to execute innovative projects. And just this seemingly simple initiative will challenge many aspects of the museum's daily work. For example, when we make space and time, what do we not do? What should we not prioritize? And these are, of course, very important issues that the museum management will need to discuss. Another way of making the journey more tangible and visible is by introducing the public ecosystem, including digital channels and services, and not as something that is separate from, for example, the gallery, the museum, where normally the producers produce exhibitions. But you have to show that this is all connected. And this is just an example, and you could, of course, create this in many different ways. But for people who are not working with digital, I think it's very important to show that it's all connected. So this makes digital something that everyone must relate to, not just digital departments or marketing. We don't just use the tools, channels, and online services, but we need to make the experience coherent across the ecosystem. And by adopting a digital-first perspective, we can also initiate internal talks about what the museum experience should look like, how it should be delivered, and what it takes to create this kind of experience. One of the greatest challenges on the journey of transformation is the unknown outcome. We might have internal talks about the digital-first museum experience, but it takes time to learn how to do ideation when we are not sure about the outcome, and also as this has to be done in multidisciplinary working groups. Because often we have in museums internally probably developed different ways of ideation processes, and we have different cultures, as also Seb Chan showed from ACME. We need to learn how to walk confidently from idea to museum experience without knowing exactly what this experience should look like. So, managing all these different challenges can be a tricky equation, handling uncertainty and unknown outcomes at the same time confidently move forward, supporting staff and stepping away from old, very comfortable work practices. And at last but not least, also stepping out of both comfort zones and professional roles. And by taking time and space to actually move ahead with stuff that are uncomfortable with digital and these new ways of working, will show you where people get uncomfortable. And you can also reassure them and solve the problems. Without offering safe spaces for developing new ideas, trying new work practices, and facing uncertainty, we risk ending up like Mrs. Pac-Man. We risk chasing colleagues like they would be eaten in the quest to brute force the digital transformation. And I'm sure that even though most of your colleagues are quite literate in digital, using smartphones, Facebook, Instagram, or even Twitter, introducing the same tools in a work process is not always a piece of cake. Sometimes I feel like this. So, there are several reasons to provide space and time for parts of the transformation journey. A training program can be very helpful in creating a safe space, making challenges visible and possible to address. In Sweden, the non-profit organization IDK, of which I am the chairman and co-founder, we have since 2015 been running a year-long program, the Digital Identities Program, which was founded by UK consultant Abhay Adhikari, who is also the main mentor of the program. Together, we have developed the program to fit the museum sector. And having followed 8 major Swedish museum organizations through the training program, I've learned a lot from their journeys. We have seen some wonderful projects developed, like hyper-local storytelling project, a fair history project bringing conversations online about gender and LGBTQ history, and also a circular fashion challenge aimed at an international design community. The training program has been designed to support and highlight ways forward in the transformation process, allowing the participants to step aside from daily work and ongoing projects. In 2016, the Nordic Museum, where I work, participated in the Sweden Digital Identities program, which was an extra challenge for me, both being a facilitator and participant. But I thought it was very important for me to bring a team from my museum to this training program. The core team of participants were 6 people from different parts of the organization, as exhibitions, marketing, photographers, and the curators. Our idea that we developed throughout the program was to use, and I'm sure you're curious about these pictures, was to use our folkloristic archives filled with captivating stories about supernatural beings to reach out to a younger audience. And why we chose to work with the younger audience is because it is a target group we normally have difficulties in reaching out to. We decided early on to find and collaborate with an external partner that could help us reaching out. And we decided to focus on a niche target audience that would also help us amplify our messages and the conversation. For us, this was quite a new experience, but I'm really happy to hear about the Tate Collective that are working big scale with this close collaboration with young people. So I'm very interested to learn more about that. So, the community that we chose to start a conversation with was the cosplay community. The connection between our folkloristic archives, the supernatural beings, and cosplay is, of course, the costumes. The word cosplay is a contraction of the words costume play, and is a performance art in which participants called cosplayers wear costumes and fashion accessories to represent a specific character. Normally, they don't do supernatural beings, but they were quite happy to take on the challenge. So we decided to launch a competition where 3 cosplayers would be invited to create costumes based on supernatural beings described in our folklore archives. These are stories about trolls and fairies and wood nymphs and werewolves and many more. And by collaborating with a representative from the cosplay community, we could design the competition in a credible way that would be accepted by the community. And by also collaborating with the organizer of the Swedish Cosplay Championships, we could offer the participants to show their costumes at the Swedish Cosplay Championships. In October 2016, we launched the competition through a sponsored post on Facebook, targeting young cosplayers. The result was 3 cosplayers that would start a 6-month-long journey together with us. As the competition had started, we continued the conversation online. We also launched a blog where both participants and the museum experts talked about the ongoing process, our archives, and the stories within. We also hosted a public event. We invited a well-known folklore expert to talk about supernatural beings, focusing on their characters and looks in order to connect to the competition. We attracted about 70 people to the event, most of which were a younger audience than we usually have. We also hosted a behind-the-scenes event where we invited the participants to meet the museum expert and take part of the archives, the library, and learn more about the online collection. And this was part of what's in it for me. When applying to be part of the competition, we could say that you could show your costume at the end of the competition in the Swedish Championships, which is a really big thing for cosplayers, but also that they got this behind-the-scenes visit, get a unique meeting with our experts. During the competition, the participants shared their work in their own social media channels. This is the wood nymph. And here we have photos from the Mountain King and the Mine Lady. And one of the most important parts of our efforts together in the training program was the evaluation. Our team we were all in this together from start to the end. And evaluation was one of the most important parts. And looking at the statistics together was helpful in sparking discussions about the results of our efforts. The call for participants was open 10 days. After the closing, we had 33 young skilled cosplayers who had applied. And I just want to mention that we did a short pilot before launching this competition. We did a small pilot about a year ago, where we wanted people to upload images to a form that we had made. And in that pilot, we ended up having like 50% of our own staff submitting their photos. But here we had 33 skilled cosplayers, no staff. And as you see, we didn't spend that much time. This is from October to January. 4 Facebook posts, 4 tweets. So it's not about producing lots and lots of content. But all in all, we had a bit higher engagement rate than we usually have. And the post launching the competition on Instagram was our most commented image on our account in 2016. Our newly launched cosplay blog attracted 1,100 views, and we had 3,500 views on the page about the competition. And another interesting thing is that we did attract a younger audience to our website during the call for participants. These numbers have been an important feedback, not only for the participants, the team, the participants of the training program, my colleagues, but also for our management, who get a tangible result. The work we did was designed as a cyclical process. We started in the spring 2016, performing, like I just said, a very short online initiative as a pilot that helped us making the entire process visible, with all its parts like discovery, ideation, performing a pilot, and evaluating. We practiced small-scale projects that enabled us to bring the multidisciplinary team together and figure out the roles and the tasks. In the second pilot, the cosplay competition, we added external collaboration to our process. Again, we evaluated the project together, analyzing statistics and discussing the process. And of course, I want to show you the result of the competition. Isn't this fantastic? 3 young cosplayers, they are in their 20s. The girls are 22, and the Mountain King is 28. He works with programming, I think. The girls are students. I'm immensely proud of the contestants that spent actually 6 months with us on this journey. 3 highly skilled cosplayers that performed magnificent work on 3 costumes. And again, this was a digital-first initiative that sparked, in turn, events in the museum. So, what did this dedicated time and space do for us? What were we able to do that would not have been possible to do without the training program? Among other things, we have been able to introduce digital tools and arenas and channels to our colleagues in a new way. Like I said, they are all quite literate in using Facebook and perhaps Instagram. They use email, etc. But this has brought another perspective to their digital literacy and also made it relatable to their own work. Staff from all parts of the museum have been working very hands-on with all parts of the process. As a consequence of working with the Digital First project, we have started to introduce digital mindsets in the group. By that I mean staff have had to consider the design of the initiative facing an online audience. And perhaps one of the most challenging parts of the training program has been to perform an ideation process in a multidisciplinary group for a Digital First project facing very uncertain outcomes. Through the cosplay competition, we have also managed to create awareness in the museum as we have involved other staff in on-site activities. For example, the behind-the-scenes event that I showed you, where we invited a librarian and a curator to meet the contestants. We have been able to face uncertainty together, and by doing so also exposing weak spots in our regular work models that will need to be adapted and changed. We have learned together how to overcome uncertainty, uncertainty about the outcome, as well as uncertainty about roles in the project. Because coming as a curator into this kind of project, some parts of the work will be very unfamiliar, or as a photographer, or even as a digital person, or as a communicator, for example. There are aspects of this project that is unfamiliar, and suddenly you will have to step out of your both comfort zone and professional role. And what we have done also, we have been practicing Agile together. Most important of all, we have been able to experiment and perform exploration in a way that would not have been possible without the space and time that we set aside. And by repeating the project cycles over and over, we will learn how to scale and to take ownership of the process. So the result from a year-long training program is that we have learned how to make the right choices on our digital transformation journey, but we have also had the time and space to create great outcome on the basis of these choices. That's why I think it's important to have, you need a lot of time, because launching a pilot takes 10 days, a week at the most, and you can do things very quickly, but changing people's minds take a lot longer. And of course, also we have gained experiences that we now can continue to build on. So this was our journey. I would love to discuss this further, and I'm staying on until tomorrow afternoon, so please get in touch. Thank you.